If you're going to be a winner, you're going to need a coach.
Sharpening doesn't happen by accident. A blade left untouched will rust, and a man left unchallenged will stagnate. Every man needs friction, resistance, and a whetstone to grind away weakness and reveal his true edge. Welcome to the Whetstone, where we reject comfort, disrupt the status quo, and forge men ready for impact. Hosted by Dredd, Dark Helmet, and me, the Plague. This is where men step out of the drift and into acceleration, because iron sharpens iron, and no man sharpens alone.
And we're back. That was terrible.
We're back.
And we're back.
And we're
All
back.
right, we're going to have to coordinate this offline at some point so that moment in these podcasts improves.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you right now, the AAR that I would give us, not good.
Not good on the intro.
Not
well, I hope you guys are doing well. We had a little pre-chat, and I just always love hearing what's going on in your guys' lives. And, Helmet and I were kind of talking about it's hard to be a one phone guy in a two phone world.
Sometimes, man.
But Helmet, I was thinking more about that, and I'm thankful to be a 2 feet guy.
You'd hate to be a 1 foot guy in a 2 foot world, right?
I'm grateful that I've got 2 feet, and I wonder.
So essentially, what you're saying,
yeah,
is that a MudGear sock is an awful lot like an outer box for your feet. Is that fair?
Yeah.
You like that?
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's not it's like a totally unreasonable analogy to have made there, Plague. I like it. I endorse it. As people may know at this point, MudGear is the official sock of F3 Nation, and therefore I commend you to go and would urge you to investigate the merit of a MudGear sock on your tiny little tootsie as you go out in the gloom or on a CSOP or a ruck event or any other number of other things. Because life's too short to wear crappy socks.
Indeed it is. I just saw a guy you may know, Roll Bar, a local guy. We were
yes.
At a workout.
Dr. Hensley.
He just came over and he just said, Plague, pointed to his socks, and he's wearing the MudGear socks.
There he goes.
So if they're endorsed by Roll Bar.
I love Roll Bar, one of my favorite people on the planet. He is, and he will know what this means, he is one of my huckleberries for sure. But I will also admit, and I think he would admit this too, Roll Bar has a little bit of a gear problem.
Yeah.
He's kind of not quite a hoarder, like I don't think we're in any danger. He's not going to find like dead cats under piles of socks in his house or anything like that. But he's an accumulator for sure. Of gear. Yeah. No question. For sure. I love it.
Well, it's been good. I think, we got the F3 UK guys off the ground with their
Holy
podcast.
Moly. Yes. What is it called? I'm trying to remember what it was called. It
had
a good name. Yes.
In Cadence. Yeah.
So good. Yeah. I'm pretty pumped. I got to listen to episode 1. I haven't listened yet, but
just
by the
just
time
a reminder,
this airs, I will have.
They talk about this in their intro, but just a reminder, you may have to decrease the speed. If you're listening at 1.5 speed to this show, you may have to decrease that to 1.
To normal 1.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Those guys are good. And, Shredder has given us some feedback, right, on our show, and has continued to kind of keep that communication line open. As I was reading a question Shredder had about a recent episode of ours, I thought we would just remind guys that, we're not professionals. Sort of as I was reading, like it was clear from Shredder's email, like he's a pastor, right? He's highly trained in scripture and all the different places. I think we were talking about marriage or something, and he just emailed with a couple additional verses. So just hopefully this show is not replacing your weekly fill of
just like everything in F3. We hope that this podcast, literally everything in F3, we hope this podcast, it provides a useful framework for you to go and live your life as you see fit.
Yeah. Not a checklist.
Prescriptive.
If there's one thing I've learned, it's not a checklist. But
that is for sure.
And then our most recent episode, we've had 2 episodes kind of back to back diving into candor and feedback and how do we take responsibility for our lives. And I had an interesting experience this last week. I was driving into the office for an in-person meeting, and I was all a little bit stressed or anxious about, kind of this leadership meeting. And then out of the blue, an F3 guy called me and needed some help, and talked to him on the phone. And long story short, he was seeking my input on some struggles he's having with alcohol, which it just sort of hit me that like this idea of the thing I do to make money and my D2X are maybe not the same thing. And I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit more with you guys and just kind of talk through like, how do we navigate that? I seem to continue to struggle with like, I don't know, like, so like there are some days where I'm focused on making more money to support my family. And then there are other days where I'm like, okay, my mission is clearly this, but is that part of sad clown syndrome? Is that somewhere on the kind of G3L? Like, where does that live in some of our framework?
I am sure that Dredd will have he'll have some stories to tell and some deeper wisdom insights. And I feel like it's something that we cover from time to time. This isn't nearly as frequent as what age should a kid be when he comes to the workout. Yeah. So it's not as frequent as that, but it comes up quite a bit where guys are like, where there's this frustration, this sadness, or disappointment or something that somehow their work and their purpose are not perfectly overlapped, and there's this concept out there of ikigai, where it's like the thing that I'm passionate about overlaps with the thing I can get paid for, which overlaps with the thing that, provides value to the world, which overlaps. And look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I think that's wonderful. And it's a decent framework. It's fine. If you look at it that way and it kind of maybe gives you some guidance or stuff like that. But a lot of guys look at that and they get really focused on that middle, that little piece where all of the things overlap. And they think, man, if I'm not there, if I'm not squarely in that little, overlap section, then clearly I must be failing at life. And I haven't hit, and I'm just going to, I'm sad or whatever. And look, I'm going to just go ahead and tell you, I can get paid to do a lot of things, and some of them I'm really good at. And we talk about one phone world and two phone world, right? So I'm a one phone guy, trying to live in a two phone world. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. But since I don't have the same kind of, one phone control over my own destiny at the moment, because, I'm working for the man. But like, I think that, guys unhealthily sometimes think, oh, well, I've again, if I'm not in that little, sweet spot that I'm failing. But I right now I'm lucky because I'm getting paid to do something that I kind of like. I'm really good at it. And it's fine, but I find no real deep joy or fulfillment in it. The leadership at our company is, they're fine guys, but they have a way of doing their things. I'm happy to support it because they pay me money. Right. And so I'm very happy to support it. And I give everything I have to trying to support it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it that way. And so is it like, oh, this is just the best, I'm just feel like I'm changing the world here. No, I'm trying to help my employer. I'm trying to help the clients that we have as best I can. But man, we want these tasks. I saw this clip today. It was with Simon Sinek. And actually, of all people, he had Trevor Noah on the stage, which I thought was interesting. But, and I think they were talking about relationships and, kind of the workplace and some of these kinds of things. And the idea was, and I actually stuck it in a Slack message or a text message to our SLT. But kind of the idea was, he says, we used to have, Simon was like, we used to have like a bowling league, that would provide you some community. We used to have a, church that would provide you some, guidance stuff on belief. We used to have, like 4 or 5 different, 6 different things in our lives. And we were out more, we were doing more, and we had these things in our lives that kind of provided a lot of these things. And it wasn't that we were so compartmentalized necessarily, but it was that we didn't spend a lot of time worrying about, oh, well, if I'm not getting this from work, then that's a problem. But unfortunately, in our society anymore, we don't have bowling leagues the way we used to have them. We don't have, cookouts with the neighbors the way we used to have them. We're big parties and like all weekend, every weekend or whatever, right? We don't have, like, people are faith is declining. We see, well, except for one in particular, but in general, right? We're seeing less church attendance. We're seeing less of this stuff. And we have sort of thrown it all on the workplace as being, well, you got to provide me community. You've got to provide me the place where I get my purpose met. You've got to provide me, the blah, 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 whatever. Right. And again, we talked about this on this podcast before, but this deep and abiding, and I think super wrong-headed desire to outsource our responsibility and our agency and put it in the hands of some other person or some other organization to feed us and act upon us rather than us taking control of that kind of thing. And so, that was a lot of rambling there and a lot of talking, but Plague, stop it. That's my advice to you. Stop it. Your work is not your purpose. If you happen to be able to overlap those things, awesome. Your work is the thing that you use. It is a relationship, fifth ring on the concentrica, right? That you use to sustain, and here comes Dredd because I can feel it, right? But to sustain the rest of those relationships that are in your concentrica, to sustain your life, sustain your, your family, all that kind of stuff, right? It ain't your purpose relationship.
Right. Well, and the message to find your passion and chase your passion. In my experience,
just jump off something. Well, I mean,
that's to me, the risk there is that I sacrifice all those more important relationships in my concentrica to find my.
Here, I got one for
passion,
you. Dredd, tell me this: a guy chases his passion, right, and then he finds himself on the kiss cam at a Coldplay concert. How did that go? Right, he chased his passion.
Well, the first question is, why would you, if you're going to destroy your marriage, you do it through Coldplay? That was the first thing I thought when I saw that.
Right? Wow. Pretty mid, but okay.
I saw, the Coldplay thing was pretty remarkable because it solidified everything I've learned about the dangers of lust and power in the heart of man. Because here's a guy. Now, I don't want to attack this guy. We don't know anything about this guy, or even if this could have been a stunt. But we are susceptible as men if we seek our purpose in things of the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to do this without being vulgar.
Well, we can always edit.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to. So power and womanizing, however you want it. I was going to use another P for that, but I won't. Are the two things.
Adultery.
That, well, they will trip a man up, and it's the wrong goals, man. And I keep seeing this thing. I guess sometimes I wonder if some of the Twitter things I follow are all written by the same guy under different heads, because it'll hit a trend. And I saw this thing lately on 3 or 4 different places. All the men in the Bible who were brought low through by women, like Samson and David, and it's just a list of them, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that is really a very true statement that would do you no good whatsoever unless you really believe that the Bible was true. Because the Bible is written, the Bible teaches us lessons through stories, but the stories, a believer would say they're true.
Right? They happened.
That's right. Oh, well, Samson got weak when his hair was cut. Yeah. But that's not really what that story is about. Right? So, I was going to say to you before I kind of got on that Coldplay thing, because I was thinking about it.
Sorry about that.
I was going to say to you, Plagu, I do the same 2 things all day long, everywhere I am, and I get paid for it some of the time by some of the same people. So I didn't engineer it that way. I didn't say I want a job that best reflects my dolphin and daffodil. I just started pursuing my dolphin and acknowledging my daffodil, and that led me in a path in my mammon that conformed to who I am. But it was not, The way you're saying it is almost like you're trying to do it the other way around. You say, I'm going to search for fulfillment, or I'm going to try to synchronize my mammon and the rest of my life. And I didn't try to do that. I accepted that I had a profession. It was hard to obtain because I had to go to 3 extra years of college, and it was lucrative enough to be worth doing, even though it was a hard thing. And then somewhere along this triple F journey of mine, the whole thing converged. In fact, that's why I came up with the idea of convergence. So when this thing where we converge workouts, I didn't make that up. What I was trying to describe is the convergence of all things in a man's life. And the example I used was my first year in college. I had to take all these core classes: European history, philosophy, theology, and English. And towards the end of the year, I realized that they were all actually teaching me the same things from a different angle. That 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 it was almost like when you break up light through a prism into its component colors, right? And then you put it back together again. That's what I'd been taught. I the same set of liberal artsy ideas that we think of as a classical liberal arts education, I just was getting them in a different classroom. So the philosophy I was learning was no different. What underpinned it wasn't any different than what I was learning in European history. The European history was based on philosophy. It was no different than I was learning in English. The things that the books that they were having us read were reflections of the liberal arts ideas that I was being taught in my other classes. It all converged in my mind. And that when I say fitness, fellowship, and faith converge, that's what I mean. They all do converge into the same thing.
You just said something, and it was like, oh, of course. And so I had a little moment. So I wanted to share my little moment here. Like, I kind of said, oh, these things aren't, they're not necessarily the same, and quit trying to make them the same. But to your point, they can be the same. But it just occurred to me, the reason I got this job, right? This client of mine asked me to come work for them is how I got it. And the reason that they did it is not because I ran a very successful corporate communications business for decades, right? That was not why. Ironically, the reason that they were like, we need you to come do this specific thing, is because the thing that I'm really good at, one of the things that I'm really good at, that I get to do in F3, right, is I get to help people overcome self-limiting beliefs, which is my purpose on earth, right? To inspire people to do that. I get to bring people into community with one another. And that's part of the way that I do that, is I bring them together, and then I inspire them to overcome these beliefs. Right? And so because of the stuff I was doing in F3, I kept explaining that F3 to the person that was my contact at this company. And she was just like, this is amazing. Like, this is ridiculous. This is so great. So great. So when the time came to do this job, just like Dredd said, no matter where I was, I knew what I was supposed to do, and I just kept doing it. Sometimes I got paid, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes, like when I do it this morning, I did it, had a meeting with a blade, and I did it there, didn't get paid to do it there. Don't care. It doesn't matter. Right. But because I do that kind of thing there, like that's what I'm doing with that person. Did the same thing over here. She noticed it. They actually hired me because of my F3 experience, not necessarily. I mean, the corporate comms experience was like nice because they get a lot, that part of it. Right. Mm-hmm. But even this communication, that is a skill and a thing that has been, since I was little. I mean, really little, that's just part of it. So it's just interesting that you said that, Dredd, because I was like, what, that's a good point. Like, if you pursue the purpose, if you really chase the D2X and you really try and submit yourself. I mean, Dredd says, and I can't remember if this was now before we started recording or after, but he says, most guys know, and they just don't admit it to themselves. They're just not willing to just submit to that.
Yeah. And that's free to lead stuff. That's not useless, I think. And no, I think we said, right. And I think we said that the two things that keep a man from acknowledging and putting to use his dolphin are uh, fear and pride. And I run the risk, because when I've said this before, I've triggered some people out there. So
Probably
this is
engineers.
teachers. So it's a pre-trigger
Teachers.
warning.
There it is. Good.
This is a pre-trigger warning, teachers. I mean this in a complimentary way. And if you'll hang in, I'll come around to it. I have the gift of teaching. And pridefully, I resisted it because I thought of teachers as those who don't do. And my mother was a teacher, and I think there's some maternal issues mixed up in my life with that. And I resisted it. But people would always ask me to do it because it's my spiritual gift. And they could see that. And so pridefully, I resisted it. So that's one reason, pride. The second reason is fear. And fear works like this with your dolphin. You'll hear many, many mature Christians who have been walking with the Lord for a long time say, I just wish the Lord would show me how he actually wanted me to use me. And I heard another guy say once to a dude say that, are you sure you mean that sincerely? He says, what do you mean? He goes, I've been hearing you say that for years, and it makes me think that you don't want to know, because if you did know, then you'd have to do it. And I think that that was a very accurate statement. And I think that is why a man will know. I have the gift of hospitality. I can throw a party. I can make someone who's anxious, nervous about being in a new situation feel welcome, and I just have that gift. My wife has that gift, and it's beautiful to watch her do it. She can throw a party. It's instinctive how she does it, and everyone at that party will feel like they're the most important person there. It's a wonderful thing. She does it so naturally, and just doesn't have this kind of bar to it. But she could go and do that anywhere, right? If she went to work for a bank, I think it would not be very long before her job at the bank moved there into that realm somehow. So in my own case, I mean, I was asked once to teach a Bible study, and it wasn't my regular Bible study. And I misunderstood the verse that we're supposed to be in, chapter. And I showed up and I said, oh, I thought we were in John 2. And they're like, no, it's 1 John 2, whatever it was. And they're like, well, I said, that's okay. We'll do 1 John 2. And I taught the Bible study. And afterwards, one of the people there said, you didn't even prepare for the right chapter. How could you do it? And I said, oh, I have the gift to be able to lay bare the truth of the scripture to make it plain for the seeker. It's just a spiritual gift. I don't have to prepare for it. I can just open up the scripture and I can teach it. And I would say the same thing as a lawyer. How can you give a closing argument without preparing? And I say, I can lay bare the truth of the law to make it plain for the juror. I just can do it.
Yeah.
And I don't have to
actually, not only can you you can't not do it.
Okay, that's the next step. I can't not do it. So wherever I find myself, take like the Apostle Paul, if he was making tents, with the other tent makers, well, he's teaching scripture, right? He's sharing the word. If he's in prison, he's sharing the word. If he's standing in front of the governor of Judea, he's teaching the word, right? It doesn't matter.
And you almost might persuade him. Almost.
Right. That's right.
Almost.
He's on a ship in dire peril. He's a prisoner there. And he encourages them and teaches them and has them land the ship safe. It doesn't matter where he is.
Because he's an apostle.
That's right. And that's what
I'm
talking. I'm talking about missionality. I'm saying it doesn't matter if you are truly missional. You've embraced it. Everywhere you go, you can't not do it. if you've gotten right so that you can live right. That's living right. That's missionality, right? That's your high impact zone. Knowing it, fighting off invitations to go outside of it. I had a guy call me yesterday and he started pitching me on something. I listened to it for about 5 minutes and I said, let me stop you, man. What is it you see me doing at this thing? What you're putting together? He goes, well, I heard about F3 and I'm trying to help guys be more, it was kind of a disciple thing and trying to help guys focus on their mission. I said, what kind of guys are we talking about? You know, they're leaders of different organizations. I said, all right, I'll be there. I just need to know when and where. And he said, you don't want to hear any more about it? I said, are you asking me to teach leadership to men who want to learn leadership? And he said, yes. And I said, I'm your man. I said, I just need to know when and where. I was like, well, we don't, I can't pay. I said, I'm not asking to be paid. I understand. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you pay me or not. If you want to make a donation, make it to F3. I said, it doesn't matter. By the same token, I'd give them more time if it's not, because I don't want to be rude. If it's something that's not my D2X and I'm listening to it, I'll let them and I say, let me ask a couple more questions. What is it you'd like to have me do? And I say, I'm sorry, that's not what I do. Oh, well, I know this is a little different. I said, I know it's actually a lot different and I just disappoint you, but I'm very honored that you asked me to do so. But I've had to learn that over time because the problem with overcoming fear and pride and becoming missional is then you go the other way. I did. And your ego wants to be fed. So you'll start, it's like the world's a nail and I'm a hammer, right? And I won't even hear what they're asking me to do. As it turns out, they were asking me to do something that is not my spiritual gift. And the closer I get to it, the more I realize that, and I don't want to do it. I follow through and I let them down because I don't do it well. They're like, oh, I thought this guy was going to be good at it, but
walked up on it. Turns out it was a screw, and you're like,
that's right.
If I hit that, we got a problem.
We got a problem. So, Plagu, for you, you need to spend less time thinking about whether or not you're being purposeful at work or anywhere else, and more time being purposeful everywhere you go. Just being purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And ultimately, no one would ever ask me to drive them anywhere I've never been before because they know we'll likely get lost or I won't be paying attention. I'll be talking, won't be paying attention while I have a fender bender.
Now, I can say for sure that I have never experienced that. You know why? He's never driven when I've been with him. He always has made me drive.
That's right. That's right. Because I'll be looking out the window. I'll be talking.
Right.
And
sleeping, whatever.
That's right. That's right. So that's my advice to you is to dig into what it is you do and just do it.
Just to kind of to point up, because the things that Dredd described there are, I really hope that guys are listening. I guess I'll say it that way. I really, really hope you're listening. But I wanted to tell a quick story, if I might, to kind of point up what he's talking about. I had gotten to a point where, because I think that a lot of times, a guy might know what his dolphin is, but I tend to think of it as a lot of times it's kind of covered up underneath a bunch of crap. That is, now that might be pride, that might be part of it. It could be, some of that kind of stuff. But, you mentioned Dredd, like, got some kind of weird mother thing back there. Maybe that's part of what that came from. Don't really know. I joke with guys all the time. Look, it's your dad's fault. Now it's your responsibility, like whatever the thing is. Right. But I think sometimes we come with baggage that keeps us from being able to see it. We got to kind of scrape some of that off. And I think that's the get right part. Right. I think that's by getting right, you kind of scrape off some of that crap that's on top of your purpose. That was the case for me. Okay, started coming to F3, running this business, doing pretty well, thinking I was kind of it, like we were big time, in my own mind. And, but we were pretty well known. We pretty much I would say of the top 5 to 10 Fortune 500s that were in the Charlotte area, that had headquarters in the Charlotte area, or top 5 international companies that had US headquarters that were in Charlotte. They were our clients. And so it was not hard for me to reach over and pat myself on the back pretty hard and talk about what all these things that I had done because I was so amazing. Now, the irony, of course, that Dredd knows is it was all compensation for the fact that I was scared to death that at some point someone's going to figure out what a piece of crap I thought I was. But that's neither here nor there. But I think that I'm doing pretty well. I get to F3. I recognize that what I was chasing and the way that I was doing it was not leaving me fulfilled. And I really honed in on this idea of D2X, and I really kind of got almost obsessed with it. And I went to a buddy who's a coach, and I said, I'm going to need your help with something because I thought I needed to do this. Along the way here, you said, Dredd said this guy that was like, he kept saying it, but then one guy was like, well, it doesn't seem like you really want to. I thought I really wanted to. And in fact, I was sure I really wanted to. And the thought that I had, I wish that I could that it had happened in an audible way so I could have recorded it or something, right? So that people would believe me. But the thoughts that I had in my head were, here I am, successful business, wonderful wife, beautiful kids, had started coming to F3, so was getting fit, was feeling good, thought, man, I got this on lock. And I remember thinking distinctly in my mind, well, God, clearly I've nailed this. So what's next? I think it's this purpose thing. Why don't you go ahead and just show me that so I can get on, and off we go. And so you talk about how pride will keep you from it. And the distinct thought that came into my mind, and if I've shared this before, forgive me, but I don't think it can be over reemphasized in some ways, right? The thought that came into my mind was, I'm willing to tell you, but I cannot work with you like this. And at the time that I heard that in my brain, I was like, okay, whatever that means, right? Then began what I think was because I was very sincere about wanting to know this. I really was. And I think from there, a systematic just disassembly of everything that I had been chasing proceeded to play out over the next probably year or so, 2 years, maybe 2 years. Yeah. And 2 years descending down into, I almost lost everything. I almost lost our house. I almost shuttered the business. I made an acquisition that went south. I had to end up firing those guys and trying to figure out how to pay them out early. And it was as bad as, and I remember I spent almost 2 years, certainly one for sure, 1.5 maybe years, literally sitting at the desk of a buddy, like in his office. He had some desks that weren't filled. And he was like, well, just come over here and just put your crap in the back of our office and sit here until you get it figured out. Because we're getting kicked out of our space that I just spent tens of thousands of dollars upfitting, to try and make nice and all this kind of stuff. Right. But I couldn't buy a client. I was doing the same things I'd always been doing. And I was sure that any minute it's going to turn around. I'm Frank Schwartz, for crying out loud. Right. I'm going to be fine. I was not fine. We lost so many things. And as a result of that, coming out the other side, and a lot of heart-to-hearts, and I thank him for it, right? But a lot of heart-to-hearts with Dredd, a lot of fights in my truck in the middle of the night, sitting in the middle of an empty field, screaming at God, and trying to figure that out, and not understanding what was going on, But what came of that was an understanding of what I'm really supposed to be doing. And now, I don't want to say it's effortless, because it's not effortless, but my gosh, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's pretty close, like I don't think about what I need to do next at work. I don't receive a lot of direction there, and they don't, they just like what I'm doing. So I just keep doing it. But it's just like, I just know what needs to happen next. So I just keep doing it, and I don't worry about it, because this is what I'm supposed to do. I bring people into community. I inspire them to overcome their self-limiting beliefs, and through communication and other means, right? And my gosh, but people are just like, this is the greatest, we love this. We love working here. We love, whatever. Like, that's what we do. That's what I'm for. I didn't know. Right. And we're doing the same thing at F3, trying to do the same thing at church. Sometimes you got different restrictions and you can't push that rock up the hill the same way, but it doesn't matter anymore. I'm much more at rest. I'm much more calm inside because I am what I am. I don't worry about it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't heard that before, Helmet. I think that's really cool to just sort of get a glimpse of what that journey has been like for you. Cause I think and again, maybe this is just how I see it, but I see a lot of, whether it's on social media or just online, where the world would like us to think it's a checklist, right? It is a 10 steps, or now you can just put ChatGPT in your pocket and it will guide you to a successful career, right? Or, just stuff like that, right? I think for me, one of the questions I would have for you guys is that I've sort of come to grips with the fact that my mission is not what I do to make money, but I kind of feel like, because of the state of mind I was in, sort of not sober minded when I was choosing what to do for college and jobs and all that stuff along the way, sort of like found myself on this career path long before I, got right and tried, and went through that. And so then is that sort of where, and I guess I would imagine guys with similar stories, right, would sort of find themselves in this, like, well, I've developed these skills. I'm kind of good at what I do, but it's pretty far off or different than my mission. I don't know.
Well, I would tell you this, like, it's funny. I think it was a compliment. It was a compliment, or I took it as a compliment for sure, that Dredd made to me one time. But I realize it now as he described, like Marjorie throwing parties, or him expounding the scriptures, or opening the law, right. And just those things that are just kind of part of you. And the way he described it to me, and at the time I was like, what an interesting way of describing that. But it really was true. He said, look, Frank, and it really was kind of this idea of just go be purposeful and quit worrying about the other part.
Mm-hmm.
If you truly quit worrying about the other part, the work part, then what will happen is this. He goes, I could make you the greeter. Do you remember this, Dredd?
Sure. It's one of the greatest things I ever said. And that's saying a lot.
It is saying a lot, because he's made many great things. When he says something like that, Plague, it means he has no idea what I'm talking about. But he's going to pretend.
I know.
I'm learning. Yeah, I'm learning.
Guilty of that, but I remember saying this to you because it was
a pivotal moment for me.
It was absolutely true. Go ahead.
Yeah. He said, I could make you the greeter at Costco. Just the guy, or sweep the floors. It doesn't matter. I can make you the guy who sweeps the floors at Costco. And he said, and within 90 to 120 days, right? 6 months, whatever, pick a time frame, right? He goes, here's what would happen. You would be doing exactly what you're doing right now for F3 Nation, or exactly what you're doing right now for the company that you work for. You would be doing that, and they would have promoted you. You'd be running the store because you can't help yourself. You can't not do it. Now, that's not because I'm some kind of great, brilliant leader, although that is very true, right? But it was because I was learning to chase purposefulness.
Yeah.
And if I would just allow myself to be who I am, who God created me to be, and do what it is that he put me here to do best I can, what would I could, after he told me that, I was like, first of all, that's a very nice thing to say, right? Second of all, I could almost picture it, right? What would happen? I'd be sweeping the floor. I wouldn't be able to help myself. I would walk up to somebody and I'd be like, hey, how are you doing? Right. And I would hear their story and I'd be like, there's a guy over here who also thinks this, and pretty soon all these people will be connected, because connection is part of my skill set. Right. And I would have all these people riled up, ready to go and ready to run through walls to go make Costco the best freaking giant consumerism hellhole. Oh, well, whatever. Right. But because I wouldn't be able to not do it. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea. So what would end up happening is I would get this great promotion. I'd make all the money that I needed to make, or I would be put in the right position wherever God wanted me to be. Because if you consider the fowls of the air, right? Matthew 6. Mm-hmm. Birds are so dumb. They fly into windows and die. Like, that's how dumb birds are. right? So if you're smarter than birds, then surely God cares about you more than birds, but he feeds them, no problem. They don't know how to plant anything. They don't know how to store up anything into barns. They don't know anything. They're just dumb little things, right? I like their eggs. They're delicious, but that's, other than that, whatever, right? And if you can't believe that you're better than birds, can you at least believe that you're better than grass?
Right.
Can you believe that? Grass does literally nothing. Like it feeds cows. Like it doesn't do anything. We mow that and then we throw it in a barn and burn it, right? And if you can't believe you're better than grass, then we got to work on some things. But I think you can get there. And the point is, right? Tomorrow's going to take care of tomorrow. You know, the Gentiles are going to chase what the Gentiles chase.
Yeah.
Fame, fortune, money, whatever it is. But what I want you to do is what he told me, right? What I want you to do is relax and use the gifts that I gave you and just be Frank Schwartz. And can I tell you, it's one of the hard, I'm not saying like, oh, my life's so hard and I got this hard, you know, like, but just letting myself be myself and admit these things and lean, for lack of a better term, you know, lean into that, like allow myself to be pulled into what it is I'm supposed to be doing. It's hard. And I don't always love it. It's hard.
Is that what you're describing, Helmut? Is that what I feel like somewhere, maybe it was a previous podcast that the two of you did, but I remember this concept of like, so the world sort of says, go get out of your comfort zone, right? But I think there's something within the D2X that's like go deeper,
Dredd.
Go deeper into it. Is that what this
Dredd says? Stay in your comfort zone but you know what, you tell them.
Yeah, I think that the cultural catechism's encouragement to abandon your comfort zone as some sort of necessary way to become a bigger person is a way to get you out of your D2X. And they do it. It's a gooish thing to do because people that are operating in their D2X are competent and joyful. And
goo hates those people.
Goo exists to equalize misery. So they're like, oh, I got all these people that don't feel fulfilled. How dare you be fulfilled? How dare you flaunt your fulfillment? Get out of your comfort zone. In other words, don't do what you were born to do. You know, do this other thing. All the while out of the other side of their mouth saying, be authentic. You know, I mean, it's just a bunch of cultural catechism crap, triple C. And so I say your comfort zone is the place where you perform the best. Of course you feel comfortable doing that. I mean, if I'm in a crowd of 1,000 people and somebody says to me, we're going to need you to give a 20-minute speech in front of these 1,000 people. And I say, I'm going to need at least 10 seconds warning on what the topic is. I say that to be hyperbolic, to illustrate that for me, that's nothing. Not because I'm a wonderful person. That's just my dolphin. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 people, 5,000 people, 5 million people. It just doesn't matter. I'll talk for 20 minutes about literally anything you want me to talk about. I'll come up with 3 main points, a beginning, an end, a theme, 3 main points, and I'll get you right out of there at 1958. You know, I can just do that. But it would be the same. And to say, oh, are you proud of that? Of course not. It'd be the same thing to say, I'm proud that I'm 5'10". You know, by the same token, I'm not ashamed of anything else about myself. To be proud or shameful or shamed about any immutable characteristic, gift of God or burden he placed upon you, is to be arrogant in the true sense of the word, to abrogate that which is the Lord's. You know, that's why Pride Month aggravates me. How can you be proud of something the Lord made you? You know, is pride always bad? No. I'm proud of the accomplishments of my young friend, Dark Helmet. I'm proud of the way he's fought, proud of the way he's fought his jester. I'm proud of the way he's taken what could have been obstacles in his life that stopped him and overcame them and made them into something that he stood upon and championed, right? I mean, yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of it, of what he did. That kind of pride is selfless pride. That's love. That's fine. But the other kind is not. So
Selfish pride, right?
Is selfish pride. So look at yourself and say, what is it that everyone consistently asks me to do? That's probably what I'm good at. Ask your wife, honey, what do you think of, what do you think I do better than I do anything, I do anything else? Well, she'll tell you the truth. Ask your shield lock. They'll tell you. They'll tell you. And believe it. And then maybe go take strength finders. All that stuff's good.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, I think some of those things is a useful framework to kind of put it in sometimes to help you give language to talk about it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But Dredd's right. I've done this right at his instruction. Do these things. So I'm just going to add a couple to the back of those. He says think about what you can't not do. The other thing was think about the patterns in your life. Like what are those patterns that you constantly see? And his point, right? Like, what do people always ask you to do? They say, "Oh man, I need X done. Let's call Brandon."
Mm-hmm.
Right? What is that thing? What are those things that consistently happen over time? All the time, right? And I think there's personality traits and stuff in there too that are useful. They may not be missional, but they may be some of the talents and abilities that you have that help you to accomplish your mission, right? To do those things, to work at your purpose, right? So like a sense of humor. My job is, my purpose is not to be a stand-up comedian, right? But I've been, I found some old report cards. It's true, from like first grade, second grade, and my teachers were all writing on them. Frank talks too much, so that's nothing's changed there, right?
True. Yeah.
He constantly jokes and is kind of the class clown. Also true, right? No matter what, I mean, I like humor. I think it's important. I think it's a healthy thing, right? So so you look for those patterns that are throughout your life. And I think the what you can't not do, the patterns, what does your wife say you're best at? What do your friends say you're best at? What are those things? Because, what he was saying before about the teaching thing, it may not be the thing that you are quote unquote passionate about.
Yeah.
It might be a thing you hate. You think you hate, right? Or that you have some sort of negative or adverse kind of a feeling about because of the pride or because of the fear, or because of whatever, right? So it may be that.
Mm-hmm.
Or go ahead.
Well, no, I think as you guys are talking through, I'm sort of thinking like what I've ran into is personal barriers, right? So there's like comparison, right? You see somebody like Dredd and you're like, or like you, Helmet, and you're like, well, I want that to be my spiritual gift. And then you try to build this gift that you maybe don't have, I think the other thing that, there've been a few times where I've been like, well, maybe God's calling me to do this, maybe it's a career shift or whatever, but then, for whatever reason, money, I think just the way the world works, right? I think money, it can guide some decisions, right? Not that money's, is everything, but it certainly, I think will guide, a lot of our decisions. I had a guy the other day, I was trying to EH at a kid's birthday party, and I've been trying to EH him for a long time. And he finally came over and he said, "You still doing that F3 thing?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I'm just kind of feeling like, we got this house on the lake. I got my own practice." He's a physician. I've made all this money. I got all this stuff. And I'm still feeling like, what's the point? And so I'm like, well, you definitely need to come to F3 now, right? We got to get kind of started. But I would be curious if you guys see other barriers or things that you think maybe. So we got pride and fear. Anything else that you feel like guys should be looking out for as things that would maybe distract them from their D2X?
Well, it's the things that you carry around in your emotional rucksack that make it harder. If your fatigue is weight times distance. Weight times distance equals fatigue. The farther you're going and the more the heavier your rucksack, the more your fatigue is going to be. So if you're carrying around a rucksack full of shame, right? If you're doing that rucksack can be heavy. And you got to open that rucksack out and take each item out and say, is this mission essential? Do I need this? What is this anyway? Why am I hanging on to this? Times I was mistreated, so I'm holding a grudge or feeling like somehow I brought her about, I'm ashamed. I bring that on myself? That's got to go. Times I mistreated somebody else. Well, I feel guilty about it. That's got to go. None of that stuff is mission essential. In fact, it's mission destructive. Detrimental. Thank you. None of that stuff should be in there. And if you can't do that for yourself, which is quite likely, that's where you get your stone to help you, or your shield lock. Say, man, uh, I'm feeling like this thing I said or did yesterday or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Uh, it returns to me. I think about it like a museum object that I go and gaze at. You know, I need to get rid of it. How should I feel this way? How should I feel this way? And it takes somebody else outside of you, steel lock, stone, whatever, to say, uh, your feelings are unreliable about this. That's coming from the evil one. I will objectively tell you that what you're feeling is not warranted based on the facts. Very difficult to do by yourself. In fact, probably impossible. Probably impossible.
My experience is impossible. Maybe somebody can, but I
Yeah,
can't.
that's right.
Yeah.
Now, what I will do with someone in whom I am in conflict for one reason or another, and they've said things to me that keep thinking about them. And what I used to do is react in a moment, get mad. Then I morphed into girding my loins and sucking it up and saying, okay, well, look, they had the reason for saying that, I'm not going to let it get to me. I found that really wasn't successful. It's kind of like getting a splinter and saying, I'll just leave it in there. But I don't want to have a confrontation that will disturb the relationship. So I experimented with this idea, and it's not fully formed, but I found that it seems to succeed, which is go to the person and say, look, I value our relationship, and some things you said or did made me feel a certain way. I'm not saying that you said them or did them. I'm saying that's how I felt. I want to be clear, and I want to tell you what they are so they don't fester. Person says, okay. And I say, I heard you say this, and this is how it made me feel. And a lot of times the person will get defensive and say, I didn't say that exactly. And I say, as I said, this is not a transcript. This is my feelings. And if you didn't say it that way, or you didn't mean it that way, I took it wrong. And that's why I'm telling you. And go through the whole thing. They interrupt me a couple times and I say, please just let me get to the end. And I'm going to let you talk. I promise. And I get to the end and I let them say everything they say. And I listen to it, but I don't respond. I just nod my head and say, okay, thanks for letting me tell you those things. I think it got the splinter out. I value our relationship and I don't want some feeling of mine to disturb it. And for whatever reason, I find that works. It seems kind of silly almost, right? I mean, I don't get into a battle over what they actually said. They know what they said, probably. I don't get into a battle about what they meant. I don't actually know what they meant. All I'm doing is saying, here's a splinter, you put it there. Help me get it out so that it doesn't fester and become an infection that disturbs our relationship. Because our relationship is more important than my feelings. I don't want my feelings to do that. And every time I've done it, it's worked. I keep waiting for it to not work. And I'm sure it will not work, or I have to refine it. But I don't think I've ever quite heard anybody say to do it exactly that way. Variations of that, but I try to keep the goo out of it and, approach the person on the basis of a relationship. This is important. It's more important. It's the most important. I'll do anything to preserve it. Help me preserve it. And the critical thing on the receiving end, when you let them say their piece, because they're likely to say, well, 5 years ago, whatever they say, you just nod your head. Yep, 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 yep. And at the end of it, regardless of how you actually feel, say, all right, I got a weight off my shoulders. And it might be an hour later that you realize you really do. It really has relieved it. Now, I'm doing that on the one hand for relational purposes, like I said, but also the burden of those feelings is something in my rucksack that causes fatigue and makes me less missional. How silly, right? Oh, I get into a fight with my wife. And for some reason, the next day, I'm not a very good stone. Well, I used to think those two things are unrelated. No, that's not true. There's a convergence. They are related. Those relationships are all related. And if I don't practice feelings hygiene, right, get that splinter out, right?
That's good.
Dredd, you need to go brush your feelings.
It's true, man.
Yeah.
It's really true. And it's helpful, but not the full antidote to share it with my shield lock, to say, my wife said this and I feel this way. Well, that's helpful. But what actually does the trick is to tell her.
Yeah.
And I want to see more people try that and tell me why it doesn't work or how they found it worked or whatever. Because maybe I'm crazy,
Well,
or just wrong.
could be. And maybe you are crazy, but those two things may not be related too. But you said that, but it got me thinking, like the idea of authenticity. We've talked about that and why we kind of shun that word. Like, we don't like that because it's not accurate. And it's been just denatured and it's terrible. Right. And it doesn't mean what we like to pretend that it means. But integrity, to me, is what Dredd's talking about there. It is embracing the actual truth, getting all the way to the actual truth of what's going on. And I will tell you, that is an uncomfortable place to be sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, really admitting and going and to yourself and then to the other person and go, all right, we got to fix this. I got, man, I don't like this guy. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to I don't have any desire for that. So handling it, like you said, that's a really good way of getting the truth out there without antagonizing the other person. Right?
Yeah.
And that's going to be critical. That's strong.
I hadn't even thought of it as a matter of integrity. It's funny you say that.
In the sense of like integratedness.
No,
you know what I mean?
you're
Like,
actually,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Right. You're actually right. Like, so I think of my output, when I think of the things that I have dominion over: input, my purity of my heart, wholesome of my input, purity of my heart, integrity of my output, right? That my words and deeds are integrated. That what I believe is reflected in what I say and do. Not perfect. No man is. But when I have done or said something that manifests a lack of integrity, when I sit down and I analyze it by looking at the things that led up to it, there's splinters. Like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
And I say, oh, well, I'd gotten into a spat with one of my kids and I hadn't resolved it. And somewhere, that worked its way into my rucksack and it caused fatigue. And then I was a little tired and I wasn't at my best. So I made a mistake in some other place. Right. And it's because we're men, we don't want to admit, and Frank knows I love to make fun of the word feelings and say, he says, how do you feel? It doesn't matter how I feel, but I think a better way to state it would be, it does matter how you feel, but you have a responsibility as a leader to not let that weigh you down. Whatever you need to do. And I'm not saying my prescription for feelings hygiene is the right one. I'm saying it is one, and it works for me. Results may vary. Right? Results may vary.
Yeah.
8 out of 10 dentists recommended this hygiene.
That's right.
But
Now, I know we're getting close to the end, and I want to say one thing, Plagu, on this topic. My wife just said it to me. We were driving up to the mountains, and she said it to me, and I took it to heart and thought about it because she's absolutely right. You take a guy who is a full-blown sad clown guy. He's chased everything the world told him was valuable, and it means nothing to him. It's ashes in his mouth. He's at one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum are fully high-impact guy, very purposeful guy. He can go off the end of the reservation in a really odd way which is to view the world as everything is missional. Everything must have purpose. And that is where I will go in the wrong direction. I will break down absolutely everything I'm doing and say, what is it I'm doing and why am I doing it? And sometimes what is it you're doing is relaxing, having a good time. You know, somebody invites you to an ice cream social. What's my mission there? No, there is no mission. Your mission is to come and eat ice cream and smile and have fun. Well, sure. I mean, what's the exact time I need to be there? Because I don't want anybody to, get here between 7 and 10. Oh, yeah. And she said, you get so wrapped up in purpose, my wife talked to me sometimes, that you will fail to enjoy something that is simply there to enjoy. Not to, not everything is an opportunity for you to bear witness to the Lord, for you to help a man be a better leader, for you to help a man resolve disputes. Yes, those are missions and they're valuable in your life, but didn't Jesus laugh? Didn't Jesus have some moments where he laughed? He did, right? Of course he did. He had some moments where he just reveled amongst the people that he loved. And she goes, if Jesus needed to do it, then you're saying that you don't need something I'm like, okay, you got me already. You beat me into a corner. She's a good lawyer. And I say, you're right. So I would say that as a build a brick or a guardrail into your life, Plagu, as you pursue missionality and purpose, to bear in mind that too much of the right thing isn't good either. If you go over the top and you literally cannot go to your kid's dance recital and sit there and just revel in her tutu, and her cuteness, right? Not trying to, I want to be a good example. She might be a ballet dancer. No. She's enjoying her little girlness and loving that you're there with her.
Yeah.
Full stop. Right? Full stop.
I love that you said that. I think that's where I find myself almost trying to make up for all the years that I was non-missional. Sort of like I spent a long time chasing nothing, and now it's easy to sort of get to that. Like, well, I don't playing Barbies isn't missional, so I don't, and thankfully, I think the way
it is for her.
It is for her, and I think God uses my concentrica really to push me out of that sort of mindset. The other thing I will just say that I love is if it wasn't clear by episode 20 now that the importance of these relationships, right? I think we've talked about the M and the 2.0s are relationships that a lot of guys have, and they're, but the shield lock and the Whetstone relationships, as we've been talking through this, right? It just is super clear to me that those relationships are key as you're going through this, right? Not at some point in the future where I think I've got it all figured out, because that doesn't, you don't get to that point. But I was also just, couldn't help but think that if it were as easy as fishing, you could be a musician. And it's the work that we avoid, and we're all self-employed. We love to work at nothing all day, and we're taking care of business every day.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a little BTO for you. A little BTO.
I don't expect any BTO. Thank you.
Appreciate you, fellas. This is great.
Yeah, guys, that's good.
Crowns, I was climbing fast. Built a house of mirrors, couldn't make it last. Thought a title, man, I found my name. But the higher I got, the more I felt the shame. Then a brother spoke, what I wouldn't say. Said you're not a king, just a man in the way. So I laid it down at the edge of the blue, where iron sharpens and egos lose. Well, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. I gave up the lies, picked up the truth. Found myself in the heat of the proof. I'm lighter now, stronger too. Cause I've got nothing left to prove. Cause I've got nothing left to prove. locks, starting to answer prayers. It's showing up when I got no plan. Just faith in the next right step as a man. I've led from the front, I've failed from the back. I found real strength in the things I lack. So take the mic, take the seat, take the praise. I'll be the stone that sharpens blades. 'Cause I've got nothing left to prove. Just another word from nothing left to lose. Never thrown, just a truth I choose. I'm a son of a sinner, a man who moves. And if I fail, let the mission resume. I'm free now, I've got nothing left to prove. For freedom is just another word.